hard to see that it's the union.
Welcome to Labor's View. This show is brought to you by the very hardworking and dedicated employees of the Essex County Division of Welfare and the members of our union, CWA Local 1081. I'm David Weiner, president of the local and host of the show. Today we have the distinct pleasure of having with us a longtime associate and friend, I hope, even though I don't hang out with anybody, so it doesn't matter. I just live in my basement. But Phyllis Salome-Kaye, who is the executive director and president? No, just executive director of a wonderful organization, which I co-chair the board for several years. I have, New Jersey Citizen Action. Phyllis, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't you give us a little background on yourself before we get to the main topic?
Well, let me give you on the organization.
Whatever
first.
you want.
Well, we're 32 years old. I've been the executive director for 30 years. We're a statewide citizen watchdog organization. We work on issues like housing, health care, taxes, toxics, jobs, family issues, where we work on public policy. We do direct lobbying at the legislature. We also have a part of us that is an education and research arm that does the backup work for the other advocacy work that we do. We also service individuals, thousands of people a year. We provide first-time homeowners counseling, foreclosure prevention counseling. We sign people up for the Affordable Care Act. We do their taxes for free. So we have a wide range of services that we offer folks throughout the state of New Jersey.
Okay, and the Affordable Care Act, for those who are watching, is commonly known as Obamacare.
Some people call it that. It
Yes.
provides
Well,
health
the president
care.
called it
That's
that, yeah.
president calls it that. And folks can sign up through our office, or there's other state agencies that also sign folks up. But it's for people who are either paying too much for their health care, want to change their health care, or do not have health care that's affordable.
Jerry, our producer, will be putting some stuff up on the screen with phone numbers where people can contact the organization. Now, one of those advocacy issues has been, for years, I know, and you were just fated, so to speak, within the Bergen Record, I believe it was, or one of those organizations. What did you? They did a really nice piece on you.
New York Times.
New York Times. Oh, excuse me. New York Times. The issue of banking and something called the Community Reinvestment Act. What is the Community Reinvestment Act?
Since the 70s, well, before the 70s, banks would literally draw a line around certain areas.
Redlining.
Red line. And it was a red line. And they would say, we are not going to make loans in those areas to those kinds of people. In 1972.
Whoa, those kinds of people would be?
Those kinds of people. In many instances, it was low and moderate income minorities and seniors.
Okay.
In 1972, the federal government passed a law called the Community Reinvestment Act, which basically said, it said several things. It said when banks wanted to merge and get bigger, community groups had the opportunity to come in and raise concerns about their lending, where they lend, who they lend to. It also said that mergers really couldn't go forward if banks were in violation of the Community Reinvestment Act, which basically says banks have to put back money into communities from which they are taking deposits. We interpret that as they have to put it back in below market rate mortgages, discounted home improvement loans, construction and permanent financing for low income and affordable low-income folks and affordable housing, small business loans targeted to women and minorities, and general economic and community development in communities of need. And with the Community Reinvestment Act, there are actually regulators who come out and review the bank's lending information, and they issue ratings. And they've been issuing ratings since the act came out: satisfactory, outstanding, needs to improve, and substantial noncompliance. For many, many years, and I'll just use New Jersey as an example, almost every single bank was rated outstanding or satisfactory. And I think people here and people who are listening to this know that 99% of the banks in New Jersey probably shouldn't be receiving those kinds of ratings. And so technically folks could decide, you can look up, it's public information, you can find out what a bank's rating is, and you can decide, I want to go to this bank or that bank, depending upon their rating. People didn't do that. So it took community groups like Citizen Action. It became necessary for us to, number one, publicize the ratings. Number two, when there was a merger happening, come in and testify and give information and provide the regulators with documentation about how we think the banks are behaving. And over the last few years, so banks just kept getting rated satisfactory, outstanding, and the act really didn't have a whole lot of teeth, and we've been trying to get Congress to strengthen it for years. But when Congress introduced the Dodd-Frank Act, and out of that came the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, it sort of added teeth to the CRA law. So now the CRA law requires that the information be provided, as does the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, but now the CFPB and the Department of Justice have become very aggressive in reviewing that information and taking appropriate action, whether it is, for the first time in history, in the country, we saw a bank from New Jersey that wanted to merge into Florida, getting a conditional CRA approval to move forward. And we also find the Department of Justice and the CFPB fining or settling with other banks and getting millions of dollars in settlements when it's been shown that banks are not reinvesting in the community.
Now, one of those banks that settled was Hudson City?
Well, it was
or were they fined?
Okay, there was a settlement, but the settlement was, $37 million. But the settlement was alongside of a merger. And so Hudson City Savings was quite interesting. 3 years ago, M&T Bank, which is a New York-based bank, decided that they were going to come into New Jersey and buy all of Hudson City Savings Bank's branches, purchase the bank. Citizen Action filed immediately a challenge to that merger because, not because of the M&T lending, but because we had over a 15-year history with Hudson City Savings Bank in trying to get them to do better, to reinvest in the communities. And they had basically taken the position, hey, look, we do jumbo loans for rich people who want to buy big houses. We buy mortgages from other banks who are making mortgages to low-income people. We don't have the staff who wants to go out and build affordable housing. And so their record has been very poor. And they basically thumbed their nose at us for many, many years. The merger provided us with the opportunity to say stop. And in fact, the merger was halted for a number of reasons, not necessarily our reasons, between M&T and Hudson City Savings. So there was a delay. And at the same time, we continued to provide Hudson City Savings Bank's regulators and the Department of Justice and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau with information that we had collected about Hudson City Savings in New Jersey. So once they got their merger issues settled, and the merger issues, frankly, were on the side of M&T Bank, not on the side of Hudson City Savings.
When you say issues in terms of their compliance?
No, issues of the kind of system that M&T Bank had set up to prevent money laundering and other kinds of transactions. Their regulator had said, if you're going to get bigger, we have some concerns about your process of making sure there's no money laundering going on. So the merger was held up. Meanwhile, Department of Justice, CFPB are doing their investigation. And lo and behold, about 2 weeks before the merger got approved, the Department of Justice and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau announced for the first time in history they had a settlement that involved redlining. So it clearly outlined that Hudson City Savings was not, of course, Hudson City Savings doesn't admit to any of this, but what it said, the settlement provides that moving forward, and the settlement has to be carried out by M&T. So it's
Because
a little
they're buying
complimented.
Hudson.
It happened
Right.
November 1st. All Hudson City Savings became part of M&T. Signs won't be changed till next year, but the integration has started, and M&T has to implement this settlement. And one of the very unusual and wonderful things is that in this settlement, there's actually a provision that requires the bank to provide mortgage subsidies to low and moderate income people in the bank's areas, of which obviously Essex County, they have 3 branches, one in your
the
building,
which are not where we rent our
Right.
union office at 60 Park Place. They're right on
Right.
on the ground level.
It requires that they put X millions of dollars aside from the settlement to give individual homeowners a subsidy when they purchase homes. It also requires hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to be spent marketing the mortgage products that they have for low and moderate income people, so that besides folks who come into Citizen Action's loan counseling offices, which are statewide, so our counselors will know about the loans and the subsidies that Hudson City Savings Bank will have
As
next
M&T,
year
right.
as M&T. But M&T also has to do their own publicity and outreach to make the community aware of these loans.
Now, Citizen Action gets to the table by virtue of making the complaint with the feds?
Well, we get to the table a bunch of ways. Yes, we and our colleagues in New York initially filed the challenge against the merger.
Our counterparts in New York?
Well, no,
Are they a
it's not.
Citizen Action?
No, it's another organization
Okay.
that specializes in housing and community development. And so the two of us and our national organization, the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, we all filed a challenge to this merger, as did Inner City Press. I believe they're in the Bronx. So that got us a seat at the table. But we always have a seat at the
Yes,
table.
I mean, I've been with you on so many of them.
We
yes.
don't. The chair is always there. I mean, most banks know when they're going to merge, they come to us
deal
first,
with us.
and they say, and M&T did that. When this merger was announced, and you sat at the table
Right.
as our co-chair.
With all their machers, all the suits.
When they brought them in, before we knew, we filed the challenge, but before we even did that, M&T came to the table and said, we're coming into New Jersey. We want to develop products and services and set goals for people of New Jersey. And we began those talks, and there was a series of talks. There was one meeting on the mortgage product, one meeting on the small business product. But once the merger got stopped because of the money laundering piece,
Concerns, right.
all of the negotiations had to stop. And so in 2016, once the settlement is resolved with the people who were involved in that, then we will move forward with a larger table of folks in New Jersey who will sit with the bank, M&T, to negotiate products, services, and grants, and all kinds of corporate culture issues, branch openings, branch closings.
Who's going to oversee them? Are we? A citizen, I say we, Citizen Action. I'm putting on my hat.
Well, they still have M&T.
They have to answer to the feds, but I'm saying
Right,
locally.
M&T, well, part of what will hopefully come out of this, like we do with other banks,
agreement.
there will be an agreement or a memorandum of understanding
MOU.
or a letter or something that has products, goals, and lending criteria. And then another part of it will be that the bank will meet with us quarterly, a group of people, whether it's a formal advisory, New Jersey Advisory Council that they set up, or something that we in the New Jersey Housing Community Development Network, because they're our partners when an agreement is crafted. or they just have a regular meeting where they bring in we call them a stoplight report, where they would monitor, show us how they've done in all the areas that they've committed to. Now, years ago, we began asking, the bank has to turn over certain loan information on mortgages, community development, and small business loans to the feds. And so we know that's public information. So we know that is clean, pure, hopefully, information. At one point, we had asked that when we get these red light, red, yellow, green, that we did it all, we did a little, or we did
These are
none.
the reports from the bank.
The
right?
reports, it's their numbers that they're spitting back. So they did X number of loans. Now, we had asked years ago to have independent auditors go in and just recheck, but there has not been a bank that's agreed to it. And we, frankly, even if they did agree to it,
Do we have
who
the
would pay
resources?
for
Yeah,
it?
right. I was gonna say,
I mean,
isn't
who
it?
would pay for it?
Yeah.
So we trust, most of the banks are our partners.
Right.
And Hudson City Savings was one of these banks who refused to be a partner, acted in a very bad way in terms of community reinvestment. But we never had a stick to bring, we tried meeting with them. There must have been 15 meetings over 15 years. But the stick became, they wanted to merge. They wanted to be bought. And so then they had to talk to us. And we have since met with the CEO of Hudson City Savings, who will be going over to M&T and sitting on their board of directors. He will not be actively employed. Well, I assume they employ the board of directors, but he will not have a position. Right. But he will be on the board, and the board's an important component. So we've met with him, and as the settlement moves forward, we're most anxious to get to, and the settlement is really mostly just mortgage related, and it's because it's redlining related. But once we begin the agreement,
maybe we'll expand a bit.
It'll expand into a variety of
Let's
products.
bring it to Essex County. The Essex County Freeholder Board, under the leadership of its president, who's the first-time president, 28-year-old Brittany Timberlake, whom you've known before because she's involved. She helped set up an organization
called the Essex County Community Land Trust. So she's been involved in housing
so she knows.
for many, many years.
Right. Well,
many. She's only 28. I'm 68.
Right,
so
right.
no.
I'm almost there. So yeah, but relatively speaking.
Right.
All right. So now she's the president of the Freeholder Board. She proposes an ordinance. What does the ordinance say?
Well, she on her own, to be honest with you, and she needs to be credited with began working on this ordinance when she first took her office, and it has gone through a lot of iterations because of a lawsuit, and we need a lawsuit in New York City for their responsible banking ordinance. And so it took some time for the freeholders and the county executive to feel comfortable with an ordinance that wouldn't violate this, what I'll say is a bad court decision in New York City. And they've come up with a law that has gone into effect that says basically any bank that is interested in, that currently has deposits of Essex County taxpayer dollars or is interested in getting those deposits, number one, has to provide the county freeholders with all of the information that's publicly available to their regulators. So that would be what they give to their OCC or whoever regulates them, what they provide to the regulators under the Community Reinvestment Act. So that's all their lending data on mortgages, small business and community development loans. Everything that's available to, at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which actually, if you go on their website, they have how many complaints have been filed against banks, what the complaints are for, how they're resolved. They don't have the individual's name, but they have the individual banks. And so the law says...
The ordinance.
It's an ordinance, so it's not a resolution.
Well, it's not a statute.
Okay, so the
therefore
ordinance...
it's an ordinance, right.
Good. So the ordinance requires the bank to make all of that available to the freeholders.
And the administration.
I think so. The meeting.
And they're
I guess so. I'm not sure about that. And that there's going to be a meeting that is held where the bank has to send representatives in person, and in fact, it will be the first week of December in Essex, before the Essex County freeholders. So the bank, the bank will have already sent the information. They will now send a person or people to do one-on-one, face-to-face with the freeholders.
to answer any questions they have about the information that was provided.
And because of the way the information comes, which can sometimes be confusing, we are asking and we're working with the freeholders to devise a simple, plain language survey that the bank also will answer with plain language answers taken from that data that they have to submit. And then the county freeholders who in January pass a resolution or ordinance saying, here are the 10 or 20 or 3 banks we're going to put our money into. The banks will use what they get from this ordinance, plus a variety of other things like interest rate and quality of service and services provided to the county. They will now have an additional tool in their toolbox. All of this information about their lending in Essex County, their reinvestment in Essex County, to use when the freeholders make that decision, and I guess the county executive signs off on it, is the way I think it works.
Not ironically, but interestingly, when you and I were speaking, I went online and went back to an old freeholder board meeting, meeting this year, when they reorganize. The first meeting is just where they choose who's going to be the freeholder president, et cetera. But the next meeting, they actually choose who are going to be the outside attorneys, who are going to be the engineers, and they choose which banks they're going to either newly or continue to utilize to make their deposits. And Hudson City happens to be one of those banks.
It does, but after doing some investigation, we actually found out that, at least according to Hudson City Savings and the freeholders, Hudson City Savings said they actually did not hold any money from Essex County because they were not equipped to provide Essex County with the kind of service that would have been needed, transactional services that would have been needed to have county deposits. So ironically, for 2015, and I can't go I didn't go back further, but in this calendar year, Essex County actually had no funds in this bank.
Well, just because these banks were approved doesn't necessarily the county did or would do money. It just means they were approved.
But they got on the list.
They were on the list.
For whatever reason. Now, with this new tool, I would bet that if there still was a Hudson City Savings Bank, which there really are none anymore, they would not get that approval. I would hope that they would not, because, well, they couldn't provide the services. Now, M&T, I'm assuming, I hope, and I haven't talked to them, but I'm hoping M&T will come in and that the county has invited them to come in and to meet with them to provide that services. And I think that once they fill out and provide that information, if all things are equal, and they never are, sometimes they are, but interest rates, services, quality of customer service, all of that stuff, if it's equal, I would hope that M&T would get a position on that list.
It would seem to me it would behoove both the bank and the county, and minimally beyond the actual effects, positive effects upon the community that would have, but from a marketing sense, and we know how much the county loves to do PR and market, both the administration and the freeholders. It seems like it would be a win-win for both of them. Were they able to do that?
I would think well, first of all, they can't, the lawsuit says you cannot refuse to put your money in a bank just because they didn't reinvest in the community. So that's what got thrown out. So that's why
That's the bad decision.
that's the bad decision.
Right.
So now, by having the Essex County, the freeholder attorney who has been marvelous, Mr. Parlavecchia,
Yes.
through this process, by trying to make sure that what was being required was under that lawsuit, it didn't violate the lawsuit, and that it's just one thing in a variety of things that they're going to look at. We're hoping that, yes, it's a great marketing tool. And in fact, as a result of Essex County, we have been approached by 3 quite large cities in New Jersey who want to introduce similar ordinances.
Great.
Another county, because this is a very, very powerful tool that our elected officials have. They decide where to put millions and millions of dollars, probably billions statewide, of our taxpayer dollars, and it should go to good banks
Who give back to the community.
who give back to the community and also provide good service and good interest and all of those other things. Citizen Action's niche in this is to help cities and counties sort of look at the information, ask the right questions, interpret the data, because sometimes they're just big computer printouts that are sent. That's what they have to file with the regulators. The regulators have whole departments that interpret that information. Counties and cities don't.
We have about a minute left. Who do you think is going to do this work on behalf of the freeholders themselves? I mean, they have limited staffing. I know because I've been monitoring them for 35 years. I've been president of our local.
Well, Brittany's on freeholder president Timberlake is on a mission, and she's really put her stamp on this, and she has a real incentive to make this program work. There's a committee of freeholders. I don't think they go before the whole full board.
No, they have a subcommittee.
They
right.
report back. I have a lot of confidence that she's going to work really hard to make this program work. I don't know who's going to do the work. To me, it's the banks that have to provide the information. It's the freeholders that have to interpret. It's going to be Citizen Action that sits in the audience and listens and also helps to interpret some of the
So we
data
can
that comes
assist
in.
the board,
So
where they
we are
so desirous.
any board,
Right.
any board,
Any
and
city,
any
any
city.
county, whatever.
We have put ourselves out there. We're going to do some major media about that and direct contact. We've already been contacted, and I anticipate the first city to pass their municipal ordinance about where they put their money will happen shortly after the first of the year.
Gee, you got to tell me when we get off the air. Is it a secret?
Well, there's some jockeying about who wants to be first.
Oh. Yeah, well, ego
You know,
expands.
as far as we're concerned, first is first,
Right.
but most is best.
It's done. All right. Phyllis Salome-Kaye, thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you for watching us. This is Labor's View. I'm David Weiner, and we hope to see you on future shows.
Here on the job, no, it is not hard to see that it's the union.